Hi, hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm going solo today. Engineer Mike Herzog is on vacation. So I've got a few articles to discuss today. Electric vehicles, just in general, a lot of it today is on some sales announcements. Some of it is on what Tesla Y sales are looking like in the US. I got an article on where Rivian R1S sales are at. Um, Prime Minister Meloni of Italy and a statement she made, Biden's plans for Chinese EV tech, and some information on battery manufacturing um, financial awards. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this. So first off, we're going to talk about the U.S. is awarding $3 billion to 25 different projects for battery manufacturing. Now, this money's coming from the Department of Energy. And for that $3 billion, it's going into 14 different states. So it's battery manufacturing projects in 14 states, which I would pretty much guarantee are pretty much all Republican dominated states because of the Right to Work Act, or the right to work versus being really pro-union. Anyways, the projects will increase domestic production of advanced batteries and battery materials and follows the adoption of the U.S. EV tax credit rules to shift battery production and critical minerals away from China. A lot of the stuff we'll talk about today is going to be about trying to get things away from China and into the U.S. The awards fund battery grade process critical minerals, components, battery manufacturing and recycling, and will generate 16 billion in total investment. So the US government's going to seed 3 billion. It's going to bring in another 13 billion, and it'll support 12,000 production and construction jobs. Mineral security is essential for climate security. Now, one of the things, a lot of the other than cobalt almost exclusively comes from the Congo, but other critical minerals like lithium are super abundant. It's just people don't mine them everywhere. So over half the world's lithium is mined in Australia, for instance. I think China's number two. But it's interesting to see because people have this perception that somehow, and I even see ads trying to talk about lithium stocks, about how it's not readily, they try to make it sound like it's a scarce mineral, but it's not. So, but anyways, lithium does exist in the United States. It can be mined here, doesn't have to be imported. Anyways, a company called Albemarle is set to receive 67 million for a project in North Carolina to produce commercial quantities of anode material for next generation lithium ion batteries. Honeywell's receiving 126 million for a facility in Louisiana. It's going to produce a key electrolyte salt needed for lithium batteries. Dow is getting 100 million to produce battery grade solvents for lithium ion battery electrolytes. And the list goes on and on. There's a number of companies that are in this space. But the cool thing is that 3 billion that's being invested by the Department of Energy is being pushed by another 13 billion in private investment, and it's driving 12,000 jobs. And so that's all a good thing, and it's going to get some production going in the United States, because up till now there hasn't been a whole lot of battery manufacturing in the United States, but there's already quite a few projects that the Department of Energy had previously awarded 1.82 billion to 14 earlier projects, and these projects are all in various stages of process. Next, this is kind of an interesting announcement from the Biden administration. Biden is proposing to put a ban on Chinese vehicles, the connected technology that comes from US roads. Now, one of the things that's been interesting about, let's say, a Tesla is a data capture machine. So when you're driving down the road in a Tesla, it's telling you what's around you. It's measuring how fast you're going, how fast the other traffic's going. There's just a crazy amount of data that's being recorded by Tesla from all their vehicles driving around the country. Now, this isn't really to be like a big brother type thing, but every Tesla has multiple cameras. It just gives all kinds of different information. Tesla sells a lot of this information to the insurance companies, but there's a lot of uses for this data. Some of it is simple as figuring out how many charging stations need to be, at what locations, when are they going to be needed. So some of that is very useful for their business, and some of it, the US would just assume that the Chinese don't get that information. And so what's happening is Biden is proposing banning the software for the cars that comes from China. They don't want the Chinese being able to do data collection here in the United States. Currently, we don't have any Chinese car companies selling in the United States. If you see a Chinese made electric vehicle in the United States, it probably has Mexico plates on it. So it's not unusual to see some of them with Mexico plates if you live down in Texas or Southern California. Um, this isn't something that's gone anywhere yet, but the Commerce Department on Monday proposed prohibiting key Chinese software and hardware in connected vehicles due to national security concerns. And this is a move that would effectively ban Chinese cars and trucks from the US market. It would also force American and other major automakers in years ahead to remove key Chinese software and hardware from vehicles in the United States. So this is something we kind of look at. It's kind of an interesting move towards national defense. The problem is when you're in a space and you're trying to mandate that everybody switch to EVs, and the cheapest EVs come from China, and you're not really, you have conflicting opinions. Now, one of my next topics is going to be about the Prime Minister of Italy, and Giorgia Meloni is the Prime Minister of Italy. And it's interesting, she recently received this award for being like the greatest world citizen or something like that, and it was presented to her by Elon Musk. And she had chosen who she wanted to be presented to. And of course, Musk is a person who is responsible for leading the global adoption of EVs. But it's interesting because he is kind of a realist in that it isn't easy to just ban uh, gas and petroleum products. So, anyways, Maloney said on Wednesday the European Union's 2035 target to end the sale of carbon dioxide emitting cars shows a self-destructive position on industrial and environmental issues. The ban on endothermic engined cars from 2035 is one of the most obvious examples of a self-destructive approach. Accompanying the industrial sector in the challenge of ecological transition cannot mean dismantling entire sectors. One of the problems is China's so far ahead of everyone else, other than Tesla, in the EV space, that it's basically, there's this look that Chinese automakers could just wipe out almost all the other automakers from all the other countries outside the US. In March of 23, EU countries approved a landmark law that will require all new cars to have zero emissions from 2035 on, effectively banning diesel and petrol vehicles and 55% lower CO2 emissions by 2030 compared to 2021 levels. The measure was meant to speed up the electrification of the auto industry, but several automakers have recently started to scale down their EV rollout plans due to poor demand. Maloney and her allies have always opposed the ban on internal combustion engines. At the time of the EU decision, her government abstained on it, along with Bulgaria and Romania, while Poland was the only country to vote against the ICE ban. Making sense of the latest ESG trends can sometimes be a challenge. And I'm not personally a fan of the mandates. I do believe that electric vehicles will take over simply because of market demands. There's so many things as the price of lithium batteries keeps plummeting and the price of manufacturing the cars keeps coming down. I think we're going to continue to see growth in the EV sector, regardless of whether or not we have these mandates or not. And we have incentives in different places, and you see mass adoption, like you see in California. California's had really good adoption of EVs. It's over 25% now of new vehicle sales or just car sales in general. But they do incentivize it. So you've got the federal incentives, you got some state incentives, you got state incentives on used cars, federal incentives on used cars. So you're seeing some real change out there. I don't think that mandates are necessarily a good thing. I think one of the things in a free society, we all expect to be able to make choices, but does need to be some hastening of the adoption of EVs, but I don't think you can just ram it down people's throats. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about sales. So I don't have a lot of topics to cover today, but the Tesla Model Y is doing so well in the US, it potentially could dethrone the Ford F-150 as the best-selling vehicle in the United States. Now, the Model Y is the best-selling car in the world. It's considered to be the safest car, and it's the best-selling car on the planet. But in the United States, it was last year around number 5. And last year, last year the Model Y was 5th in highest sales volume by model. It was beat by the RAV4, the Ram 1500, and the Chevy Silverado, and the F-Series pickup trucks. Now, mid-year sales data from Kelley Blue Book placed the Model Y in 4th behind last year's top 3, but new data from Experian puts the RAV4 at the top, followed by the Model Y. So the RAV4 has 2.8% of U.S. sales. The Model Y has 2.6% of U.S. sales. Its highest share of new vehicle registrations in the U.S. ever. So it's currently where we're at, and I can show this graph. Take me a second here. Got my screen share. And there we go. So here we have the RAV4's number 1, Model Y, F-150, Honda CR-V, Silverado, Camry, Corolla. You know, it's interesting to see that when we look at, so the RAV4 is a SUV, Model Y is a crossover, F-150 is a truck, the CR-V is, I would classify it as an SUV now. My car used to be a little hatchback. Now it's a kind of a large SUV. The Silverado 1500 is a pickup. Then here we have a sedan. So the Camry is the best-selling sedan, but it's way down here. The Corolla is a sedan. The Sierra is a truck. The Nissan Rogue is a crossover. The Chevy Equinox, I believe, is a crossover, maybe just an SUV. And the Civic is a car. So we only have really, you don't see a whole lot of car sales. And what's interesting, there's no US car sales anymore on here. I'm sure the Tesla Model 3 is probably not far behind the Civic, but it'd be one of the few cars that we're seeing. And the only true EV on this list is the Model Y. So basically, Tesla made a car that people actually want here. I do think they look a little goofy. I'm not just in love with the way they look on the outside. I've driven them. They drive around the interior. They're amazing. They drive really well. It's the acceleration's incredible. They're quite roomy, even for somebody tall like me. So I can get it. And the fact that it is considered to be the safest car in the world adds a lot to it as well. You're both less likely to be in an accident and less likely to be injured if you were. We did a video a while back of a car in China that some lady somehow managed to take it airborne in the city, and it was flying over and spinning over cars, bump, 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 hit a number of cars. There was 4 people in the Model Y, and all of them were able to walk away from the accident. I mean, it was pretty crazy. In any other car, probably 1 or 2 people would have been dead, and the other people wouldn't have been able to get out of the car. And in this case, they were all able to walk away. I mean, it's just insane how safe Tesla makes their cars. It doesn't matter how you feel about Elon Musk and his political standings. There's certainly reasons to buy a Model Y. Next, this is our last topic for the day. We're going to be a little short because I don't have the banter back and forth with Mike. I hate that he's out of town, but that's the way that goes. Yesterday we had a great show with Bill and Marco Soriano from Sorano Motorcycles. We were the world first to announce their current arrangement for distribution in the United States with McLaren Motors. So they're going to be their bikes are going to be exclusively sold by McLaren in the United States. They have some different distribution deals with Koenigsegg and some others. And what was really unique is in the EV space, one of the big problems is these companies having the money to actually manufacture. Well, Sorano Motors was celebrating yesterday their 121st anniversary of producing motorcycles, and they certainly have the financial wherewithal to make it happen. They signed basically a $1 billion agreement with McLaren in the past couple of weeks, and um, it bodes really well for Soriano. Soriano is not a public company. Marco Soriano, that was on the show, owns 92% of the company, so it's not going to go public. So I think he's quite happy with that. But it's one of the, it's something that'll be a true EV success story, unlike a lot of the other companies we often talk about. I'm going to talk a little bit about Rivian, and Rivian's a company I'm always worried about, but they have some really good news. They currently, although some manufacturers have lagged a little bit in sales this year, Rivian is currently in third behind Tesla and Ford in the United States in EV sales. Now, this means that they jumped ahead of Hyundai, and that's a pretty big deal. The Rivian R1S, which is their large SUV, which essentially competes with the likes of um, Range Rover. And when you look at this, you can kind of see I'm looking at an article with some photos here that shows it out in the wilderness, but it's got the similar shape to a Range Rover. It's kind of designed same kind of ads, things like that. But they're definitely a very capable off-roader, but it's a large SUV, and it's basically a similar size to the Range Rover. But it's currently the fourth best-selling EV in the United States. Um, let's see. It's the Tesla Model Y is number one. The Tesla Model 3 is number two. The Mustang Mach-E is number three. And the R1S is number four. I'm going to show this because it's kind of interesting to see how much of EV sales are dominated by the Model Y. The Model Y is 35. This is quarter one of the US, but the Model Y was 35% of US EV sales, followed by 11% with the Model 3. And the Model 3, I was talking earlier, is a sedan. So it is just a car. Excuse me. Um, but it's interesting to see that because we don't see a whole lot of pure cars. The Mustang Mach-E is essentially a crossover, and I wish they would stop calling it the Mustang. I think it really is kind of a replacement, really, for the Explorer. But you can look at it any way you like. But you have a big drop off from 11% of the market to 3.5. Rivian's at 2.9 with the R1S, and then you got the F-150 Lightning, the electric version of the F-150 is at 2.8. We've still got the Chevy Bolt down here. Now, if you look at 2023 sales versus 24, there wasn't actually a 2024 Chevy Bolt. So for some reason they dropped it. They're supposedly bringing it back next year. I haven't actually seen any more, any news lately on this, but who knows where that may end up. But the Ioniq 5 was on there, the Volkswagen ID4, which is a nice looking vehicle. The Cadillac Lyriq is actually creeping in there, and the Tesla Model X. The X is a little bit more expensive, but actually, if you compare the X and the Lightning and the R1S, they're all pretty expensive vehicles. I think if you were looking at the R1S, you'd probably also be looking at these two down here, the Cadillac Lyriq and the Tesla Model X, as comparable vehicles. But the Model X has been around for a few years, probably could use a visual update. And a lot of people are really liking what they're seeing out of Rivian. The Rivians are considered to be ultra safe vehicles as well. And Um, that has been, you know, something good for the market. Anyways, that was all I had to cover for today. I see I've had quite a few people watching today. I haven't had anybody commenting, but that's okay. I hope everybody likes the content. I'll be back with Mike next week, and we can talk about some more engineering type stuff. I'll be back with Bill tomorrow, with Bill Moore, and until then, well, everybody.